Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. It was a bit while since I did a last video about live looping with the LP2, and now it's a good moment because Bob just released a new firmware which is 2.67. This is super cool because now this firmware is actually the very same for basically for the LP1 and the LP2. This means for the LP2 that now you have access also to hidden, let's say, hidden features which were available up to now only for the LP1. And during this video I will also show you how to program this, and also we have a look also to the new LP monitor, MIDI monitor, in which programs which you have, one being the one for the MACOS and the other one is for the Windows. The Windows, it's the new one, and this is actually the one with the most features, because it allows you also to fine-tune your MIDI notes, which you can send to the LP1. Okay, so for the unit itself, you see on the ground I have as usual my LP2 with the MC6 MIDI controller. My unit is a bit twisted and tweaked because I added this button which it's actually connected to the config button in the back, so I can by foot I can access the config menu so that I can change my FX slots, which is super handy if I don't have any loops or a loop running on the LP2, because otherwise to access the menu I need to have a loop in play, and then by holding rec I can access the menu. With this button I can do that independently. Also if I'm in stop I can access the loop. If I recall, if I hold rec up when in stop, I delete all the loops. So that happened me very many times in the past. And also I added this knob, which is actually it's wired to the feedback port on the back, so that when I don't have an expression pedal plugged in, this is actually my expression pedal for the feedback, which is super cool because now I can also control the feedback by knob with this knob. And it's super cool and handy because actually, although I still have my feedback control here on the MC6, which by any press decrease the feedback by 10%, and then if I long press and release I set it back to 100%. I use them combined now depending on the mood and the situation. Okay, a new feature for the LP2, and it's super cool because this actually was a request of mine to Bob for the LP2. It's now related to the commands which are the next track and the previous track, because before, now super cool because I can assign this to effect 1 and effect 2, but before it was like this, that you could only press the button, and now for example I have a next track programmed on my slot, and this will go to the next track, so from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and back to 1. Now with the new firmware we have this new feature that when I use next track, by pressing I go next, and if I hold I go to the previous track. So this is super cool because now I can, if I am for example on 2 and I wanted to go to 1, I no more have to scroll through all the loops, but I'm on 2, I just hold and I go back to the previous track to 1. So this is cool, super handy. I tested it out yesterday evening. It was a Monday, so I did my ambient sets and it works flawlessly. Okay, and this is for the unit itself, standalone. Okay, now we go to check a bit the apps. So first we start with the Mac app. As you see here, I can select my my MIDI connection. This will be my UM1 with this Roland MIDI to USB cable. Here I see the status of track 1, 2, 3 and 4 with the length, the position of the loop, the status, the panning, the volume, the feedback. We do an example. For example, I record a loop. I see it's recording, I see the length of the loop, I see now I'm in overdub, now I'm playing, I change the feedback, I see the feedback is down, now I do a fade out on the loop, and I see the volume going down. Okay, now I do a swirl, and I see the volume going from -to 0. Okay, stop and I delete. Okay, and nothing is there. Good. So basically the same as before, nothing new, just the interface which is tuned to the Mac. Here I have my slots which I can assign with the functions I can assign to FM button 1 and 2. Now super cool because I have access to all the, if you go and have a look to the MIDI mapping in the manual for the LP2, now all these functions which you have available in the MIDI mapping are assignable to the FX slots here, which is super cool. Oops, excuse me. It's super cool because now I can really customize I can really customize the LP1, the effect button 1 and 2 to my very needs. Okay, then we have read configuration. This means the app will read the effect which are saved on the slots, and save configuration. As soon as I do some changes, I can save that to the unit. If I don't push that button, you won't have any changes happening. Okay, this for the Mac. Now give me a bit of time to unplug some cable and we go to the Windows. Okay, now we are back on track, and now we can check the controller, the monitoring app on the Windows, as I happen to have also a Windows computer. This actually still looks like the old school app which was previously available. Also here we see information for all 4 tracks. Here we have the fancy graphics for the panning, the volume and the feedback. The same as before, the FX slots. And now comes the new part, which is this part here down below. So here what I can do is modify my program changes, my CC messages, and my control changes, and the MIDI notes. No. And it's super cool because actually I have 8 slots. I can create a sequence of 8 commands which are sent with that message. And it's super cool. It was already like this in the LP2, in the LP1, sorry, in the LP1 was already like this, and now you have the same in the LP2. What does it mean? As I recall at the beginning of the medium, I told you now LP1 and LP2 share kind of like the same firmware. Of course, you have to think always about, if I'm using LP2, I don't expect LP2 to be able to trigger track 8 because you have only 4 tracks. So if you happen to trigger track 8 on the LP2, nothing happens. So always keep in mind that LP2 you are working on 4 tracks and LP1 we are working on 8 tracks. So you have to keep in mind the limitation of the LP2 in the number of tracks available, because not everything is possible in LP2 as you have in the LP1. Okay, and now it's super cool because actually under the hood I have in the LP2 now I have access also to this function where before were only available in the LP1. And for me, for example, the cool part is to reprogram the MIDI notes or program new MIDI notes. And this is super cool because I can, for example, create my own MIDI notes with my own combination of messages, or also I can go and check what messages I have in the LP1 which I don't have in the LP2, and I can reprogram those. For example, a super useful command you have on the LP1, it's the Q track command. This allows you to select a track which is in stop, send Q to that track, and then as soon as you go to another track which is in playing, or you select a group of tracks which are playing and you do stop on those tracks, the Q track will start playing. This wasn't available up to now in the LP2, but since now I have access to all these LP1 messages, what I did, I programmed that to Midi Note 10, which up to now was free. So now on Midi Note 10 I have Q track. And now let me demonstrate a bit what it does, Q track. So we start with a bit of noise on loop 1. Super simple. Okay, now I go to loop 2. stop this one. Now I go to loop 3, I create a new loop. Okay, now I go back to loop 2, I say Q, I go to loop 1, and to loop 3, excuse me, and now I stop it. And now I still have one running, and I stop 3 and I play 2. Can do the same, Q on 3, I go back to 2. Actually, I mean, in this case with 3 loops I could do also the same by going to loop 1, saying accept and play stop. Okay, and so I can like this. I can also go and do this manipulation with my multi-tracking. I mean, for example, it's also cool to combine Q and accept, because, for example, what I can do is, let's say I have 1 running and 3 running. I go back to Q. Now I say Q, track 2, accept track Q, and now I push play stop. I stop 1 and 3 and I start playing 2. And so on. I mean, it's up to you then how to use this function, but you see, it's these are super sleeky commands you have when you are managing or multi-tracking looping, and they come really handy if you know how to use this. Okay, I mean, this is an example of a MIDI Note which wasn't available before, but I can also take existing MIDI Note and customize those to my needs. For example, and this is the only one I did up to now, and actually it's the only one which, for me, I use LP2 also together with the MC6. The only one which made a sense to modify was MIDI Note 11, which normally would send only the track erase command. Because, I mean, when I do my stuff with the LP2, I do also a lot of manipulation, maybe change the feedback, the volume, whatever, and so when I delete a track, I really want the track to be ready for a new loop and to be like really a blank canvas to start looping on. And what I noticed is that if I send only track erase, what it does, yes, it deletes the content of the loop, it removes a reverse or an half speed if those are engaged, but it won't affect the feedback, the volume, the loop level, etc., etc. So what I did was customize my MIDI Note 11, which will still send the track erase, but now I can send also, by triggering this note, feedback 100%, track level 0, and pan back to center. Not doing the pan, but it's nice, not do any panning in the moment, but I mean, it's a nice to have, so set and forget kind of like. And this, for example, for me it's super cool, because this simplifies a lot the way I have now to program my MC6. Because if before I wanted to create a delayed track with all this command, I had to program one MIDI note after the other, and now I have everything condensed into that MIDI note, and this allows me really to simplify a bit the MIDI program. And but this, as you see, affects only the MIDI notes. If I go here in the FX slots, here the difference, I can't assign to these FX slots a sequence or a combination of multiple functions. Here I can only select the single functions per slot. Here's type my dream. I hope that maybe sometimes Bob will find a solution how to assign MIDI notes to these slots. That would be super awesome, but I mean, maybe it's a dream, it's something for the future, but now it's super happy how LP2 developed, and super happy that Bob is still working on it and putting out new firmware and new features and new way to customize the unit to the needs, and this for me it's something which is priceless. So great, so that was it. I hope you find some new information about the LP2 and Looperlative product in general, and well, let's do some noises and see you soon. Bye!